Okay, this is the main project description I sent out the other day, and then the other one is here. I did a little addendum, just kind of a I don't know where it went here. Let's see. It's the main one. Oh, there's the addendum. Yeah. So just a kind of musing I had last semester. I just did Sunday musing on what it means to make the marks and why we're doing mark making and all that sort of stuff. So read that over. I did 2 drawings essentially for this project, specifically for this project. One was a pear here, and one was a setup last semester with a pumpkin and an onion. So there was 2 objects there, right? And the objects are volumetric, meaning rounded, right? Next drawing, we're going to be drawing geometric objects again, right? Because we're using straight lines, parallel cross hatching. So that lends itself a little bit more, not necessarily, but a little bit more to hatching process. Whereas this is a scribble process. Now they're kind of similar. It's just an accumulation of marks over time to create a value in a drawing, okay? And they result in different kind of vibes for the drawing. You can see here this, there's where I started. That was 2 hours into the drawing, right? Imagine that, 2.5, 3 hours into a drawing, you don't hardly see anything. Okay, do you know how much discipline that takes?
Tedious more than I have.
Well, no, but on the other hand, if you get your mind right, it's fun. It's relaxing. It's if you're a nice light touch, it's zen. It's meditative. It's all those things, right?
Do you have scribbles on the whole paper?
Yep. You can't really see them, but they're everywhere. Yep, up in the corner there you can kind of see. Okay, so I do it everywhere on the drawing. It's a little pixelated there because I'm blowing it up. I have these in some form or another somewhere, but more resolution. And then 5 hours in.
So that's what we're going to have to do. About
Now, you're not going to spend that much time on this drawing, okay? But if you could create a drawing that looks like this, maybe you spend 4 or 5 hours this week on a drawing, okay? I'd be happy with that, that you're not getting to that really dark stuff, real fine sense of resolution. See how I'm really cleaning these edges up quite a bit, right, by backfilling in that cast shadow area. Here a little bit, not so much, right? So here's a 5 hour into the drawing. 7.5 hours, a little bit more yet. Okay, a little bit more. So I'm not pushing harder, really. I'm just hanging out in these areas longer, right? So this is 2.5 hours later in the drawing, right here, than down here, something like that, right? Yeah, 5 to 7.5 hours. So I paced this intentionally and took the pictures just so you can kind of see. So this is real graphite on real paper. And then 10 hours in, right? So another 2.5 hours here. So it gives you a sense of incrementalization of, that's not a word, but maybe it is, of how to approach a drawing, right? Any questions about that? So, go ahead.
Do you want us to use the HB pencil again?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I have to go get some.
Yeah. So you can see why I'm asking you to learn to draw lightly. Right? That sense of touch, a sense of nuance. Let's say you want to eventually become a professional artist, right? And you want to draw something like this. Bunch of walnuts sitting on the table. Or something like this. That's graphite on panel. Okay, these are Italian brothers, twin brothers. They do each different work, but I can't ever figure one out from the other. But that's all graphite on paper. But look at the sense of nuance and the kind of all these little, I'm not talking about the detail here, but these shifts in value, right? Light, dark, medium, deep, medium, light, dark, medium. That comes from having a keen eye, which comes from having a keen hand, meaning knowing how to lay down the material lightly, right? Be really nuanced with your mark making. So that's why I asked you in that last exercise to do that really light coating that you can barely see of scribbles, tiny little scribbles, right? That's all this drawing is. Now, they may go in with a stump, a blending stump, and do some smudging, but it doesn't look like it to me. It looks like they build this just with this kind of fine little kind of movement of the tip of the pencil over, and then, of course, darker, darker, darker way in the background, right? Okay. Okay.
Do you know the size of that drawing?
I don't offhand, no. I can look these guys up.
No, that's okay. I just was curious.
Yeah. But you know, this is all they do is, and they both do the same thing, and they're these you know, these still lifes with this, you know, kind of really light touch there, and they're really beautiful drawings. So my point is that doesn't happen right in the first hour of the drawing. You know, this might happen 2 months into the drawing, right?
Right.
Okay, so learning how to slow down with this pencil and getting really light sense of touch is really important. I took a blow up of this cork down here, this cork to the wine bottle, and you can kind of see, you know, the texture of the board. They're not working on paper, they're working on gessoed board, I believe, something like that. But you can kind of get a sense of the fine kind of feathering with the tip of the pencil to create that. And even this wire right here, right, is light against dark, right? This piece of wire right here, the top piece of wire, light against dark. And then the wire itself has values in it to create a sense of shadow and whatever, right, and highlight. So, and drawing this kind of wound wire here, right? Not easy to do. And no outline, by the way. It's, you know, they use a line there, but it's, you know, it's not outlining a shape. It's just like you got dark back here and light right here. So you're creating edge in this by filling in the area behind and leaving alone the area in front. That's what I'm talking about in terms of creating edge instead of outlining a drawing. I don't want you to we're not going to outline this drawing. We're still going to take that same process, that same approach. So there's a video that's attached to, there's a suite of videos here that I did that kind of talk about all this stuff. That's in the it's a what do they call it? YouTube. I mean, it's YouTube, but you know what I'm talking about.
Hello, everyone.
Oh,
we're going to be talking about using the scribbling technique to create a rendering, and this drawing that I did for this video.
So I could choose like an apple or something.
Well, I'm going to talk about that, Paulette. Yeah. But that would be okay. A video playlist. So I gave you a link here to a video playlist. I can't remember the name of a playlist. That's not hard to remember. So the first video is me actually drawing the pear. Okay. Second, I talk about various drawings and what to think about in terms of samples that I've done over the years in class and out of class. So I narrate this and talk about relative value and, you know, how you gain all that stuff. So that's just kind of that's a nice one to kind of view. This one I drew an egg one year, and I outlined, you know, what it means to you know, kind of this is kind of nice because you can kind of see how before I get into it here, I think in this one I have two. I just had two. I did 4 versions of this egg so that I could use it for class demonstration. And I can't remember if I had 4 versions. We'll see here. So I think I just had 2 that are remaining. I couldn't find the other ones. So that's like, let's say that's the first hour, right? You know, you can kind of see the scribbles. And this is, you know, full, I think half sheet. No, this is half sheet. That's what I want you guys to work on, half sheet, because it's a intensive process. So then we move to the finished version. Now, you can still see in this all these little scribbles and stuff here, right? They're still there, but I've just gone over them and gone over them and gone over them so many times that they start to cancel each other out. That's why you don't want it to be when you make your scribbles, you don't want it to be a parallel line in this case. You don't want it to be a loop. You don't want it to be a spiral. You want it to be random so that you can go any direction at any given time to create randomness in your drawing so that all those little scribbles start to merge together. Notice here though, how do we recognize the top of the egg there? Why are we seeing the top of the egg versus the background?
You made the background darker.
Yeah, yeah. So back here, the background's darker. Then look what happens to the background. As it moves down, it lightens up. I let up a little bit, right? I don't do as many scribbles. Why? Because the egg starts to get darker than the background. That's relative value. And as I move down further, all of a sudden the non-egg, or the foreground, or the area underneath the egg, is that lighter or darker than the egg now?
Lighter.
Lighter. Yep. So now I have the transition back to the egg being lighter than the non-egg, which is in this case the foreground. Let's move over here. What's darker, egg or background in this area?
Background.
Yep. What's darker, egg or background?
Egg.
What's darker, egg or background? Down here.
Background.
Right here.
Background.
No,
Oh, the egg.
I think the egg is still a little darker right there.
15 hours,
Mhm.
20 hours.
All right.
Yeah.
Here, though, the transition takes place. So you can see I didn't draw an outline there. When I started the drawing, come on, you can do it. See how ambiguous an edge is here? I'm just gathering marks here to figure out, oh, it's going to be there somewhere. That's going to be clean cut, clearly defined at some point in time. And then this is the other side of the egg, but then as you finish the drawing 10 hours later, I didn't erase it all in this drawing. All I did was bundle my lines a lot more cleanly along here as I developed that roundness of that edge. And here's a no man's land, by the way, an area where the background and the egg blend together. That's okay. You should have that. Okay? All right. Okay. So that's a little bit. And in this video, I actually document, it's sped up, but I actually document the creation of the egg, or of the pear in this case. Now I'm moving fast, but you can see just kind of a faint shape there.
Do you want us to scribble like this pretty?
Yep. Paulette, that's what I wanted your vessel drawing to look like.
Uh-huh.
No sharp edges. Okay, that scribble one. Okay, no clear-cut edges. Even though it was a beautiful drawing, but keep it open, because we have a tendency to want to over-control a drawing with outline. And the fact I'm not letting you do outline here, right? Well, it makes you not do that, but people still do it.
I think Sarah's cup was really nice. That one she spent a couple hours on.
Yeah. I'll show you guys that in a second.
Drawing,
Yeah,
I always think it's wrong because I feel like it's just too little of a shape.
When you do this, you mean?
Yeah, when I'm at like this stage specifically, it always feels like I'm doing it wrong because I haven't really gotten an actual shape yet. It's just a collage of scribbles.
Yeah, so that's a good point. What you can do then, if you work lightly enough, right? You have the room to shift and move the drawing. So if this wasn't big enough, I'd take these scribbles and just move them out a little bit. I'm not tied into anything right now, right? In fact, I could even make it smaller by contracting the size of this thing, because this is so lightly done right now, it can still be background. This could be either background or object at this point in time, because I'm bringing it into being in such a slow, subtle way. We're so used to drawing by just and like carving that shape in with that hard outline, right? This is a totally different way of working, okay? So if you move lightly enough, quickly still, but lightly enough, you have that latitude to shift and move this thing because of the beauty of relative value, right? Like at the end of the drawing, look how dark it gets. So I could shift and move the thing, right? In that space in between this and that, what I just showed you, there's a lot of latitude to shift and move the thing.
So with this pair drawing, I noticed there's definitely not as much background focus as the egg drawing. It's mainly just focusing on shading in the pair.
Yes, there's less. Yes, and that's a very good point. Part of the reason is that the pear is darker than an egg, right?
True.
So I don't have to spend as much time trying to create a contrast between the light part of the egg and the background, right? As I would on as a darker object against a lighter background. I can just spend more time on the darker object, right? So that's a really good
Right.
point. Does that make sense, Jeremy?
That does.
Yep, that's a really good point. I did a little bit, I think. Let's see here.
Because the teacup you drew in the other example was pure white as well.
Yeah,
so.
yes, exactly. Right. So you're spending more time in the background because of that stuff. Yeah, and there's no place in this pair really that it's lighter than the background, right? I still am out there doing stuff just to give the credit, right? You know, to give cred to the background, to give energy, to kind of give a flow out there, right? There's still a ton of marks out here, right? Because I want it to be an overall vibe, and people always forget that. Even if it's a dark object they're drawing, they're going to always forget to play in the background. You got to. You really have to. Okay. But by the end of the drawing, you know, see how I put a little bit of a line in right at the end of the drawing, because I can backfill into the pear, and that line isn't a line really. It's just an edge at that point. Okay. Notice this little gash in the pear right here. That little kind of scar right there. So that's a little bit of a line, and it's dark on one side and light on the others because it's a little bit of an indentation, right? So it's catching a little light here and a little bit dark here. So if you have something like that you're drawing, it's not just a line. You always have to think about the form issues there. One student last semester was a little frustrated because this sped it up. See how I'm backfilling there? I'm kind of putting a little bit of line in and just backfilling, just to kind of clean that edge up. Notice down here, though, when I backfill, I'm not backfilling into the pear. I'm backfilling into the cast shadow down here, right? These are points, by the way, to Jeremy's point, that these are areas where the non-pear is darker. So I'd spend more time with the cast shadow area, certainly, right? And then the pear becomes lighter underneath and get a little bit of a reflected light under there. So I have a video here that she was a little frustrated, which I can see about how fast to make the drawing, you know, because I speed them up. So I did a little render, video render here of how fast I actually draw when I'm and how I move around the drawing. So you know you can not much comes out of the drawing, but you can kind of see the speed at which I'm making the drawing, okay, and how the pencil's real loose in my hand, right? You're probing the world, right? It just happens to be a sheet of paper. You can see some scribbles there, but so you can see how slow kind of the development of the drawing is, but how I'm constantly moving, not worried about too much, right? Okay. So we did that. Now let's go back to the, and you know, again, you got to read this stuff over on your own, but because we don't have a ton of time. But talk a little bit more about value, light and dark. So highlights, of course, we know those are the areas that are lighter in the form, whatever form you happen to be drawing. And then you have middle tones, right? And then you have darker areas, which are the shadow areas. In this case, the brow or the area under the brow. And then modeling shadows are the transitions between light and dark. And then even on a face, there's reflected light, right? Talked about the reflected light underneath the cup, underneath the eye, there's some reflected light there, right? Over here, you can kind of see where it began. So this eye right here looked like this. This is a self-portrait did looking in a mirror. Looked like this eye on the left side of the drawing. And all I did was hang out there and just kind of refine it, Okay, no blending with the stump, no, nothing. You know, these edges, this little highlight here, the glint in the eye, you know, that value is, you know, something like this over here, where the iris is here. So the value that's over where this iris is on the unfinished side is the same value as the glint in the eye. But the glint in the eye looks lighter. Why?
But you didn't shadow that part.
What's that?
Because you didn't concentrate marks on that part.
No, but why does the light part right here look brighter than this area over here?
Of all the darkness around it.
Yeah, that's relative value. Makes it look brighter. Okay, so I didn't erase that away. I just went around it as I developed the drawing because I had patience to go slowly. Okay, so here's the same thing. I just kind of reiterate here. The background. So relative contrast or relative value here, background that makes the top of the light bulb look lighter. This is a highlight area. This is a modeling shadow. Now, modeling shadow is a shadow that you create when you transition from light to dark across a kind of a bulbous form, a form that's, you know, or more organic, that has a curve, a linear transition across its surface. Volumetric, they call it, right? So a bulb is a really nice example of volumetric form. It's rounded, okay? And then under here, again, we're down to that reflected light thing we talked about before. And then we got the cast shadows, right? So just kind of reiterating that stuff for you. Now, this chart represents a value scale. So you could break your drawing down into, they kind of bleed together here, but up in the upper left-hand corner of this value scale is, we'd call that number 1, and we call this up the bottom right number 100. So I didn't, but we've broken the value scale up in this case into 1 or 0 through 100, probably 1 through 100. This over here represents a third of that. Conceivably, you could make a drawing that lives in this zone.
That's essentially what we're going to do this week.
Probably, yeah. If you get in a hurry and try to go too dark with this, a 5-hour drawing, it's going to look like a piece of crap. Okay? So, yes. Probably at least a third or half of that full chart, okay? But you can see the more values that you have in the drawing, the more subtlety exists in the drawing, right? So, you know, these I would say, you know, where's a 100 in this drawing? If you can kind of voice it. Where would it?
Middle of the first basket.
Huh?
In the middle of the first basket that's close.
Yeah, in here probably, right? In this area?
Or that little tip or whatever.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
let's go back to that. Yeah, kind of like right in the middle of the basket here. I don't know if you can see that moving around, but be close. Maybe not, maybe 70, 80, you know. On a scale of things, this is a much lighter, airy drawing, right? Not as dark as,
Can't believe that's a drawing.
yeah, it is. I know.
Is that an apple or a peach, that one in color?
That's a peach, yeah. Yeah, I like that. I don't know why I pulled that out, but I like the way that looked just as a kind of a thing. This would be 1 to 100, right? Obviously, probably, right? Just because it's so dark. But realize these start out as kind of very random kind of images. Yeah, I don't know why this is, you have access to all this stuff. But I just like that as because we're doing a still life. I thought that was nice. That might be, I don't know if that's Dürer or not. I don't know, but that's beautifully done. That's a watercolor though. Some people call watercolor drawing, but I like these. Andrew Wyeth drawings are really nice here. He's a master draftsman. Here's a really nice use of kind of line as an expressive kind of contour outline, as well as this kind of very subtle development of value as well, right? So there's an example of using both in a drawing. This is a really beautiful drawing here too. Less is more sometimes, right? Look at that composition. He had these really modernistic, he was a realist, but he had these really modern kind of stark compositions. Look at the beautiful handling of line in the hair here, as well as value, and just the nuance of this mark making. Very light sense of touch, right? And then going in with some scribbles and parallel hatches here. Much more subtle mark making down here in the mid back, right? So you can see we're knowing when to be real subtle. You wouldn't want this sort of movement that's back in the background on her body, right? So developing a sense of touch and a sense of nuance in your drawing is really important, okay? Okay, let's finish up this. So we talked about value there. Any questions as we go here?
You want us to try to enlarge it a little?
Half sheet and try to, yes, make it fill up the composition, okay?
So I've got a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
You want us to do like two types of scribbling, right? One for the background and one for the actual thing that we're focusing on.
Well, in the end, yes, in the end.
Layered detailing, scribbling.
Yeah.
On the background, it's more like background long stroke.
No. So that's a really good question. I want them to begin with to be all the same. So I would say a two or three, maybe 2-inch kind of little scribble. So the background has to be, you got to start small. Don't start big with that, even though it's a background, okay? That's a really good question. Excellent question. You want to create consistency, but what's going to happen eventually in the drawing, may not have time to do it for this drawing, but you would start to make instead of your little scribbles being 1 inch, let's say, or 2 inches to begin with, maybe that. You're going to end up down to like 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch scribbles to get that sense of finish and refinement in the object. Yes. Okay.
Start with like small scribbles, but go down to smaller. And
Yeah.
smaller.
Yeah. So that's why it's important to work fast, okay, but lightly, because you got to have a lot of scribbles in the drawing. Okay. All right.
It's gonna take what, maybe at least an hour to do the whole page?
Well, to start to develop the form, maybe start to get a little sense of the form developing. Yeah. You're doing the whole page, and you're just starting to get a little sense of that form developing. It's almost like you're carving the drawing out of an atmosphere, right? And if you don't have atmosphere in the drawing, right, which are that kind of vibration of the scribbles across the whole page, then you're all of a sudden psychologically so object oriented in your approach that it's going to be, no matter what you do in the drawing, it's going to feel like it's out of place. Okay, so it's like you're taking atoms that are floating out in the world, and you're a magician, and you're kind of bringing them into the drawing and forming the object that you're drawing. But if you didn't have that stuff happening out here, you couldn't do the stuff in the object, if that makes sense, right? So working out here starts to inform what happens in the object. And then there's a really beautiful relationship between the two, right? It's both object and place, okay? It's this really subtle thing that is very difficult to describe unless you do it, right? So it just takes practice. But that's a great question, Jeremy. So they're very similar probably for the first half of the drawing. And then you move into the second half of the drawing, then you're going to start shrinking the marks a little bit, okay? Not so much you're going to over-control it, but just shrink them a little bit to start to create a little more density to the drawing, So probably the marks in the light bulb here that I did are different than the ones floating out here. That is correct, okay? Does that help?
It's because you focused more on the light bulb and put more time into it.
Yeah.
In the background, you still did the scribbles, but that's just what's left over.
Kinda, yeah. Unless I have to go in and do some counterposing of values, right? Then I'm going to spend more time here and feathering that out into the rest of the background, right?
The first scribbles are about how big?
I'd say 1 inch to 2 inches, maybe something like that.
Okay, and
Okay.
it should be all right.
Yeah.
So
Now see what happens if you're heavy-handed. Okay. I mean, it's a nice drawing, but like you don't ever escape from that heavy-handedness. See the difference between these two? And to answer your question too, Jerry, see how big these scribbles are here in the light bulb? You can't ever escape from that. They're heavy and big, right? So
Right,
you-
and this probably took a lot less time to do
yeah, yes.
because it's darker. So
Yes. Yes, it did. And that's another problem, right? So people rush through things sometimes, right? So, and nobody has a ton of time, but yes, that's a very good point. Yep. So we get in a hurry, in other words, right? Kind of. You say, yeah, well, I got an hour, and then I got to go do math, right?
the lines at the bottom of the light bulb probably took one try.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, that's probably it. That was probably one attempt right there, rather than like laying it down in these very subtle shifts of value over time.
Right, like you could see on the light bulb, it was actually like used to screw on rather than just lines on the light bulb.
Oh yeah, exactly. So why? Because it's not beautifully done, but it's okay. I'm looking at lights and darks as they undulate across here, right? Not just kind of taking my pencil and kind of filling it in, with lines. Although they didn't do a bad job, but
Yeah, it's not bad, but like it's not like focused, like layering it on the scribbles.
right. Yeah. Now the other thing guys can't forget, if this light bulb is at a 3/4 angle to you, its axis is going to be like at an angle on the page, right? So all those structural things that we learned the first half of the semester apply here. Proportion, so as you make the drawing, you got to think about that stuff. Do visual measurement, assess things as you go. Don't just be a kind of a non-thinking being when you draw. Although we do that sometimes, and it ends up nicely. But you got to kind of plan things out, right? So those proportion, angle, approximation, all that stuff's embedded in this stuff, no matter what you draw. Okay. All right. So I just threw some extra drawings in there just to kind of show you. For instance, see the kind of the shadow that's moving around this thing. See that arc? So the shadow in this egg doesn't just go straight across; it arcs along the contour of the egg. That's a structural issue, right? Can you guys see that? See the blue line there?
Yes.
See that blue line arc? So I just didn't throw a shadow straight across the darn thing. I understood there's a curve to that. So the shadow itself has a curvilinear structure, the body of that shadow. And this is a modeling shadow running from top to bottom. Okay, because the light's coming down from the top. Okay. One more thing here, lighting the scene. So let me pull that up. Lighting is so important. These pumpkins I did with the setting by the window here. So I had to close the window off so we can talk about lighting a little bit here. But I like that, it was nice. And the light did change, Paulette, to your point, every day, because I didn't do it all in one day, certainly. And if I did it in one day, that's a 10-hour day, and the light's going to change anyways, right? So, okay. Can you see that?
Mhm.
Okay. So, what is that?
Toilet paper.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Very good. Very, very keen sense of
Yeah,
the world.
recognition.
Yeah. So I have this light over here. Now, Meredith talked about having the lamp above, right? So if I was lighting this toilet paper from above, like his lamp is pretty tall. I would get a lot of light on the top surface, right? But if the light was coming in from the side more, I'm just lowering this down, right? All of a sudden, I'm getting, my highlight is where now?
To your left.
So,
On the left side of the thing, right? And see across the form here. That's the modeling shadow right there. Why am I seeing left? How can I read the left? How can I read the left side of the toilet paper? It has a highlight on it, but what does that do to the background behind it?
darkens it.
Yep. Essentially, though, the background behind the left side of the toilet paper is the same as the value behind the right side of the toilet paper. But look how light the value behind the right side of the toilet paper above the cast shadow looks versus the left background area right in here. And that has to do with the highlight on the left side of the toilet paper. That's relative value. This looks lighter than this over here, but it's not. It's the same. In fact, this is probably a little bit lighter in the background there, right? Because it's closer to the light source. So you can see how playing with light is a really important thing. Do I want to accentuate the roundness of the toilet paper? Or do I want to accentuate the tube where the toilet paper hangs on the rack? Okay. That to me would be a more boring drawing than this. Okay. Do I want the cast shadow to come out towards me? In that case, the modeling shadow is not as dramatic. So I pull the light backwards. Do I want a cast shadow not to be as prominent and let it kind of move into the background? So now I have like a 45-degree angle of that cast shadow moving across the drawing surface, right? It's going back at an angle. Now I'm losing the top. The top is like disappeared altogether into the background. There's no contrast there anymore. What could I do about that? Which way should I move the light? That top back edge of the toilet paper is gone.
Down. Lower.
Lower. Now it's going to darken it even more, right? So now the toilet back edge of the toilet paper is darker than the background. Let's go the other way. Now it's getting lighter than the background. And I still have my modeling shadow. Now the cast shadow has shrunk. So I'm kind of getting the best of both worlds here. I'm losing a nice sense of light there though, right? So as you can see, playing with light is really important, and you don't see that stuff unless you have a nice white sheet of paper. All I did, so you have to set it up on a table, is I just took the paper and leaned it up against, you could tape it, find a surface like the tabletop, prop it up against something so you have a smooth transition between foreground and background. And just use one of your sheets of drawing paper. Okay.
Do you have any examples of the students' work, the scribble drawings?
I was going to pull that up and I forgot to do that, Paulette. The thing is that we spent 2 weeks on them for the most part, so they may not be, I do have some. I'll send some out, okay? Yep, I'll send some out, but that's the one thing I did forget. So, that's a light object, right? We know the cup vibe, right? So,
Right.
white object, you can kind of light it in different ways. I talked about that when we did that drawing. Now, I'm going to show you that versus, so you can see those changes between light and dark rather nicely with a white object on a white background. It's not so easy to see with a dark object, right? That's why that doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's just all dark and all white. Right? Even, something that's maybe a medium value. Still, I see a little bit. It's okay, but I'm not getting any relative value between background and object. Still, there's relative value in the object, right? Obviously, this front lighter than the interior of the cup over here. But the background's way lighter than everything else. So there's no play between background, foreground, and object, which is what I want in the drawing, okay?
Well, what if we used like an apple or something like that?
So I have an apple. That's not an apple, of course, but what is that?
An avocado.
Avocado, yeah. See, that doesn't work either because it's shiny. So you're reflecting the surface, and by the way, those cups are shiny too, so they don't work as well as a matte object in my estimation, but it's shiny, and then it's like you either see the shine or you see just pure darkness there, right? So that wouldn't work. So an apple is a tricky one.
I think so.
Yeah, because it's so dark, okay, and shiny. Lemon might be a little better because it's lighter and it may be a little more matte. Let's see what that looks like. White onion works nicely. That's a little
Shine.
better. That's a little better, right? I'm still getting a darker object on now the left side of the lemon. Yeah, look at the left side of the lemon there. Just see the angle I'm lighting it at? The left side of the lemon is lighter than the background, right? The right side, the back right side of the lemon is darker than the background. So we got a nice transition going on there. And that's because the lemon is lighter in value and a little more matte maybe than the avocado. Okay, it's not as shiny. Now you could draw a lemon and fill up your whole composition. It doesn't need, that's a small little lemon, but you could make it, a grand statement, fill up your piece of paper with a lemon, right? Just make it bigger than life size. It's hard to do, but that's a good thing to practice as an artist. Okay, because we tend to make things smaller than life size, so you'd end up with if you just go with your instincts, you'd have a tiny, 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 tiny little lemon on a big empty sheet of paper. And that's no fun, because you're going to be spending forever just filling up the background, right? Dealing with the background. Because the lemons...
Oh, how big was your light bulb, the one you did?
That was on a half sheet of paper, so half the size of the 18 by 24. So that was bigger than life size. I mean, imagine a half sheet of 18 by 24 sheet of paper, and
So it was like 3 times as
yeah,
twice as
probably.
big.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. And never put the thing kind of like straight on at you. Whatever you're drawing, if it is in an organic form, tilt it at a little 3/4. It's more interesting. Okay, if it does have an axis, of course the lemon has an axis running through it, right? So you could turn that as 3/4 away from yourself, so you get a little better view. And you can do 1 or 2 objects. I'll leave that up to you. Like I did the pumpkin and the white onion in that one scene. So. Does that help in terms of lighting? Do you want me to do any other kind of?
So you can use just a regular lamp?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to, it's not an industrial.
No, I use this.
If you need 2, you
No,
can just use one light
I'd use
source,
one,
right?
just one. Yeah, just use one. Now, what you might find you want to do is raise the object up. So find a box or something to place the object up a little higher, so that the lamp light is not just coming straight down on the thing. Like Meredith, in your view, your lamp is so tall relative to where you're setting it up that that you might have a direct light from above, so you might not get a nice side lighting on it. Okay, so think about that. So the way to solve that is not to find a shorter lamp, but just raise the surface of the area you're setting the bulb on. Does that make sense? Yep.
Yeah.
But you need to play around. You got to spend a half hour, maybe. I don't know. I don't have to do that because I'm used to doing it. But 15 minutes playing with lighting, right? It's really important, because the contrary, what happens if you don't have light?
You don't get contrast.
Well, you don't see
Yeah.
anything, right? No light, you don't see anything at all. So that tells you how important light is. It's like everything in terms of video and film and drawing and painting and all that sort of stuff. So, it's really important that you consider light, because the alternative is not to consider it, and you might as well not have any at all then, right? So
Can you take a photograph of the image that you're trying to draw?
are you saying take a picture of it to ask me about the lighting, or after you draw it?
Or after you draw it, do you want us to take a picture of the angle we do it from?
Yes, yeah, same as before. Yep, same as before. Yep, that's in the notes there. I think I mentioned. Did I say that in the notes? I can't remember.
You did.
Okay,
You
so
did.
yeah, that's good. Yeah, but don't draw from the photograph though. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I don't want you to do that. But now look, just one more thing: the lighting issue, right? So this feels like it's a daylit. I don't know if it is, but it feels so. There's a sense of light in this drawing that's radically different from, go back to the skull again. This drawing, right? Radically, this is a more direct light, a more spotlit sort of kind of vibe going on, right? This is a more ambient sort of light going on.
Did you put that one up you did of the, what was it, the one with the onion and the pumpkin?
Yeah.
I'd like to see that one, because I have an onion, maybe I'll do that.
Onions are great to do, particularly white onions. I wouldn't do the red onion, Paulette, because
All right, I have a white one.
yeah, just because of that issue. So, I didn't get into a lot of detail here, but that tells you how, I didn't get into any of the striations or anything like that. But I was focused more on the form than anything else. But what is that page number? What am I doing there? What the hell that is?
So So you want us to do like a 5-hour one of that?
Yeah, 4 or 5 hours spent on this. Just you know, if you can get to this, if you can just do a pumpkin and it's like that, this value right here, you know, this number 2 of that drawing, that would be perfect. See, you know, I even let it go. I like, oh, let the pumpkin blend into the foreground here. So what? Does anybody know? Wouldn't people? I mean, if I didn't say that this was a pumpkin, would you know that that was a pumpkin right there?
Yes.
Yeah, you would. Look at the stem, even fades into the background. That's a cool thing to have happen in a drawing sometimes. Just let it disappear. That's what I'm talking about, Jeremy, and too, in terms of that, letting the space and the atmosphere be the object, right? It has to be a dialogue between the two. That the object and the space have to be part of each other's development and end result, okay? So letting things disappear into the background is not a bad thing, okay? All right. Any question about lighting, anything else? Wednesday is not mandatory, okay? But, you know, if you're struggling with this or want to have some input, I'm here to give you some feedback. But I want it to be on your own terms, okay? Not on me forcing you to. And then, you know, same thing applies in terms of Friday. It'd like be done by Friday or, you know, thereabouts, you know. Some folks are still working on stuff from a couple weeks ago, so that happens. But don't get too far behind. Okay, a lot of information. No one can complain that they don't have enough information. In fact, I'd probably give you too much information, but with all the videos and all the writing and all the kind of samples and all that stuff. So look at the videos. Part of learning is studying, and part of learning art is studying and doing, you know, both of those things. Doing and then thinking, well, what am I doing wrong here? It's not working like it should. So then go back and study, i.e. look at the videos.
Do you have time to